Hello and welcome back to the latest edition of Liverpool Transfer Daily. I'm your host, Edward Kay, and I'm joined today by Liverpool.com's very own Matt Addison. And we're, of course, going to start by talking about Liverpool and all things Liverpool transfers. Jurgen Klopp, very touchy once again in his press conference yesterday, Matt, when he was asked about the potential of Liverpool dipping into the market in January. Do you think that's genuine frustration at constantly being asked this question, or do you think it's maybe a bit of frustration boiling over from a lack of investment in January?
Yeah, it's a difficult one for him, isn't it? I mean, he can't really say anything other than what he said. I thought he wasn't quite as kind of onto things as he was in his previous press conference. So it was interesting to see his comments. I think that the more interesting thing actually was probably his embargoed section, which you can read the quotes on the Echo and Liverpool.com, which I thought was interesting, really, around sort of making major changes. He was asked to think about the Borussia Dortmund comparison that comes up every so often of, 7 years or whatever it is, and then things start to fall. And I know people at Dortmund have talked about, what they should have done really was, rather than move Klopp on, was to change more within the squad and do a few of those changes. And that seemed to be what he was suggesting, really. But obviously that's going to come in the summer rather than this month. Partly, I think, because they can't get the players that they want now, but they can possibly in the summer, partly because of the contract situation as well. So it's just sort of come to a point, really, where I think Liverpool are just going to have to be a little bit patient. They're going to have to put up with a few more results like the Brighton one before the end of this season. But obviously then the frustration is that you think, well, it probably could have been avoided if they'd have moved, say, Oxlade-Chamberlain and Naby Keita on in the last summer or the one before, perhaps, and maybe replace them a little bit sooner. Maybe you can sort of stave this period off a little bit more. And B, you'd look at it and say, well, it's only really possible to have a proper revamp. It's probably only possible to go and get, say, Jude Bellingham and one or two others to replace these players if they get in the top four, which looks like, a really difficult task at this moment in time. So, yeah, it's in context, I think it does make a little bit of sense, that the kind of things that he's saying, but at the same time, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be any easier for the rest of this season. And it certainly doesn't mean it's going to be one of those situations where it's going to change. I'm sure they will continue to look before the end of January, but at this moment in time, it doesn't really feel like anything's going to happen or anything is imminent. So, yeah, like I say, if nothing happens, there's going to be a few more frustrating results, possibly even this evening.
Yeah, if nothing happens, I think it definitely will be more of an uphill battle for that Champions League qualification. I think everyone can see that. But you've been one of the more optimistic fans that I've spoken with, really, Matt, when it comes to there being any more business in January. Obviously, with Klopp having come out and pretty firmly in his last couple press conferences said there's probably not going to be any more business. How are you feeling about that now? Are you leaning towards it might not happen?
Yeah, I if I had to guess, I don't think it will happen, but I don't think it's impossible. I think just purely on the basis of, you'd look at what Liverpool did in the summer. Jurgen Klopp all summer until the very end said, no, they don't need one. What more could you possibly want? And I think it was fairly obvious to most people that the kinds of things that they wanted from a midfielder. They obviously went for Tchouaméni as well before he went to Real Madrid. So I think there was an acceptance there. And of course, then he suddenly decided actually fans and journalists were right and he was wrong, and tried to rectify that with Arthur Melo, who's played, I think, 12 or 13 minutes and has been injured for the rest of the time. So just purely in terms of the situation, if Liverpool realised they were desperate for a midfielder, or certainly desperate enough in the summer to go and get a player on loan that they'd never really shown any interest in before, hadn't got the best injury record and all the rest of it, I think just purely the fact that they accepted it then, nothing has changed since. In fact, the situation has probably got worse because Curtis Jones hasn't played at all. We've seen Fabinho and Jordan Henderson's form drop off. Thiago, we know, can't play every single week. Naby Keita and Oxlade-Chamberlain, even if they're fit, they're out of contracts at the end of the season. So how much should you be, relying on those two in particular to get you through into the top four? I just think that the situation, if they accepted it in the summer that they needed another midfielder, if anything, it's got worse since then. So, why wouldn't you go and look and see what there is? I mean, it's just one of those where I don't necessarily think it will happen. I think if there was a perfect player, like Cody Gakpo was obviously one that they wanted for, a little bit further up the pitch. if they were going to do it, they probably would have done it like they did with him, got it sorted, got it out of the way, and the player comes in as soon as possible. So I'm not particularly optimistic that it will happen, but I'm sure they are continuing to look, because just purely it wouldn't make sense for them not to do that. I think it's becoming clear that they obviously, they've wanted Jude Bellingham for a long time. Matheus Nunez looks like one that they want. Possibly they might have to go and do one or two more in the summer, but the problem with all of those options is that you can't really wait until then and then be out of the top four next season. It kind of, if it was up to me, they would do it now, but I don't think that, realistically is probably going to happen at this point.
Yeah, you mentioned Matheus Nunez there, and we'll move on to a bit of Wolves preview. Obviously, it's going to be a chance to see him, who we've been heavily linked with again, and also recently linked with Ruben Neves as well. I'm assuming we might see him later. Do you think it's going to be, hopefully it's not a case like it was with Caicedo the other day, where we're watching him absolutely overrun the Reds midfield, but are you going to be keeping an eye out for Matheus Nunez in particular, Matt?
Yeah, I think I'll be interested to see what team Wolves put out, actually. I know they're out of the League Cup now, aren't they? They've maybe got a decent chance, I would say, of staying up. They've got a couple of signings in. I think they're a much better team than what they've shown in the first half of the season, so I think they'll probably be all right. So I think there is a bit of an argument, really, for them to go a little bit stronger. I think they'll feel aggrieved from what happened in the first, not the first leg, but the first game before the replay, obviously with the offside goal and all of that sort of stuff. So I think I'd probably expect them to be slightly stronger in terms of the team selection than Liverpool, but it'll certainly be interesting. And yeah, I think on Ruben Neves, I've never really thought that he would be a Liverpool midfielder. I know he's worked with Pep Lijnders in the past, and I know Liverpool have been linked a couple of times, but he's just one of those players that's never quite made that step up. I don't think he's quite mobile enough to be a Liverpool midfielder, but then you think at the moment, well, pretty much anyone could be more mobile than what they've got. So that's not necessarily going to be a massive issue for the immediate future. So I've never been quite convinced on him, but the more I see of Matheus Nunez, I think that the more likely that one seems. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see if he does play tonight. And like I say, I'd be more interested than anything to just see how strong Liverpool go. I don't know whether this is, maybe more an opportunity for someone like a Curtis Jones to get minutes. Maybe Naby Keita gets his first start. I don't know how Liverpool are going to approach this one, but yeah, I'd suspect that probably Wolves will be the stronger. And I have to be honest, I am expecting Wolves to win and go through. So yeah, just to bring some more doom and gloom to the morning stream. I'm not expecting too much from Liverpool, but yeah, it will certainly be interesting to see Nunez and a couple of the other Wolves players, because as much as they are near the bottom of the Premier League, I do think they've got a number of good players.
Neves is an interesting one, yeah. Like you say, he's one of those players who just seems to get linked with anywhere and everywhere every January, every summer. He's always linked with Barcelona, but never really made that move, has he? Obviously, you said you're not expecting too much from Liverpool in terms of the lineup. Jurgen Klopp saying that he would be going as strong as possible. Obviously, you've said you're expecting Wolves to go through, but are you at least expecting to see a reaction from Liverpool after what Jurgen Klopp said was possibly the worst game of his career?
Yeah, I suppose, you'd expect there to be a reaction. It kind of depends really on whether it's a similar team. I suspect there'll be quite a few changes, so it's not really, a like-for-like type thing. It's not the same players who have to bounce back. It's going to be difficult, I think, for someone like Curtis Jones, who's not played a lot of football, if he does come into the team. Fabio Carvalho as well, we've not seen him since the first half at the Etihad at the turn of the year. So there's just a few sort of question marks. I think if Liverpool put out the same team as what they did against Brighton, then I think, yes, you'd see, an improved performance. I don't necessarily think it was a lack of application. I just think they're physically, incapable of keeping up with some of those Brighton players. They're just too fast and too quick for them. So I do think there would be an improvement. And, Liverpool were absolutely dreadful at the weekend, but I just think it'll be a much changed team, really. I don't necessarily think the goalkeeper will change. I think there'll be a couple of changes across the back four, possibly 2 or 3 in midfield, maybe a couple in the attack, though there's not loads of options. Don't think Darwin Nunez will be risked, even if he has trained. So I think there'll be a number of changes. It's then just a case of, even if Liverpool do improve, how much are they going to improve? How much can they change? How many of those players would you say are in form or in peak sort of condition? It's going to be a difficult one, I think, for Liverpool tonight. And it would be a shame if they went out, because it does look like the only competition, really, they've got any hope of going on and winning. But yeah, I just don't know with Liverpool at the moment. They are going to have to improve and they're going to have to get better at some point. But I'm just not quite convinced that an away game against Wolves, who already feel that they should have won at Anfield, I think Wolves are going to be up for it. Certainly their crowd will be. And there's unfortunately just no evidence really of Liverpool playing well recently. So yeah, if it happens, it'll be a nice surprise. But I'm going in with very, very low expectations, I would say.
Yeah, as you say, it's one of the cup competitions. Obviously, we're out of the League Cup now. Although, to be fair, with in the Champions League coming up against Real Madrid, I'm not sure if you watched any of that Super Cup game, but they look like they're struggling a bit as well, to be fair. So maybe we've still got a chance there. Would be nice to see Darwin Nunez. Obviously, he's sort of a bright spark in that Liverpool team at the moment, makes everything a bit more entertaining to watch. But as you say, Ed, probably not going to be risked tonight. Jurgen Klopp saying he's close, but probably not going to make the team. But that is all we've got time for here on Liverpool Transfer Daily today. Let's hope for a good result for the Reds later on. Matt, thanks for joining me, and we'll catch you next time.